Too Much Information is a production of iHeart Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Too Much Information, the show that brings you the secret histories and little-known facts behind your favorite music, movies, TV shows, and more. And today we're going to be delving into the always mysterious and more category. Who are we? Well, we are your deans of dessert, your governors of glucose, your sugar plum sweethearts serving up bonbons of banality alongside our bon mots. Yes, we're like chocoholics, but for trivia and also chocolate. My name is Jordan Runtagh.
I fucking hate you.
It was an onion thing. It was the onion reference.
I'm Alex Heigl.
And, you know, folks, as the wise man once said, life is like a box of chocolates, and so is this show. You truly never know what you're going to get. And today, we are going deep into one of my favorite topics of all time, candy.
With all the sprawl that implies.
Yeah, get comfortable.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you know this about me, folks, but I have the biggest sweet tooth of all time. I have the dietary habits of an elf, sending that line out to perhaps our most stylish friend of the pod, Siggy, who introduced me to that line. I don't discriminate when it comes to my love of candy, and we'll be taking a similar approach on this episode, which is just a massive scattershot look at all types and brands. I have a confession to make. The original idea was to have this episode out in time for Halloween as a trick-or-treat special, but as some of you may have noticed, things were a little slow going for a while, and that was my fault, and I'm sorry. My friends at iHeart had me working on some other short-term projects that sort of took over, including one, if I may, a little plug, called Stones Touring Party, which is a deep dive into the Rolling Stones and their epic 1972 North American tour, which is widely regarded as the first tour of the modern rock era. It's the tour that taught multiple generations how to party like a rock star. But that show is now done, and we are back to our regularly scheduled program here, which I'm so happy about. And now we're going to binge on candy stories, which I am just beside myself about. I'm so excited. Heigl, I'm about to ask you one of my very best first date questions. Tell me about your favorite candies. I've never asked that on a date. I'm going to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I love Halloween, like, I kind of grew out of having a sweet tooth, like, at one point. Obviously, like, trick-or-treat is a big thing, but, like, I just don't really reach for candy as much as I reach for, like, I lean more towards the savory side of the trash food.
Pork rinds.
Been getting a lot of... Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah. Been getting a lot of. Well, if we're talking Pennsylvania, I'm a big sourdough pretzel kind of guy.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Just carve up the roof of my mouth like a cluster bomb, and just suck all the moisture out, and then choke that down with a Yingling. Put on some Steelers, head downtown. I'm not going to do any more Pennsylvania accents. Go down to the creek. No, I haven't gotten a Pittsburgh one. That's going to shame my dad. He's going to be upset about that. Yeah. Did I say Funyuns already? I've been eating a lot of Funyuns.
I've never had a Funyun in my life.
Oh, yeah. I'm just so much more of a chips and because it's like the repetitive motion thing where
I'm pretty repetitive with candy.
Well, yeah, but I guess I think of like a Snickers bar is like a discrete single serving option.
It's like a one hitter.
There's like two Twixes, Now, obviously, when you're talking about your multi-part candy experiences, your Skittles and so forth, that's a different story. And I used to do all the kinds of weird shit what you do when you're a kid, where you put a bunch of Skittles into like a Sprite.
I never did. I respected the candy too much to do that. I'm not familiar with that.
And then, did you have state fairs? What's a Boston State Fair? Is that just like racism and baseball?
I'm from far enough outside of Boston where it's just like a good old fashioned like farm fair. I'm from a place called, I went to high school in a town called Bolton, and they're famous for having an annual fair called the Bolton Fair. It's been going on for, I want to say, like 120 years, and they do things like they have pigs that race.
Hell yeah.
I mean, that kind of thing. So,
well, my segue there is I had like deep fried Snickers.
I never had that. We had
was like a
candy
treat.
apples. That was more of a New England thing.
Yeah, I do like a candy apple. But yeah, I mean, as far as if I'm still reaching for candy, well, it's like a movie thing for me too.
Yeah.
Like I'll get Red Vines or I started out on Twizzlers and now I've moved over to Red Vines.
Red Vines are better. I agree. Because they're worse. They're better because they're worse. You know what I mean?
But then otherwise I'm very vanilla in my candy flavors. I like a Snickers, I like a Twix, I like a Payday. Obviously Reese's are good.
Wow.
Oh, I love a Payday, you know.
I don't think we have any Payday content in here.
Sour Skittles are really good. You know what it might have been, honestly, at one point when I was like 12 in our like class bingo thing that we had, I won like a CVS sized thing of Warheads.
Oh, wow. You got no taste buds left.
No, they literally burned an ulcer in the roof of my mouth. I ate so many of them. And because after the intense sourness, they're just disgusting little nuggets. It probably burned out my sweet tooth too. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not as big. It's not a big passion project for me, but I'm so excited to learn.
Well, let me ask you this though. How long did you go trick-or-treating for? I've been asking people this a lot lately. Or at what age did you stop, I should say?
What age did I stop? Probably like 11.
Okay, yeah.
10 or 11. Yeah. Is that reasonable?
Oh, I think that's extremely reasonable. You almost struck me as somebody that would have kept it going till the bitter
but
end.
What I wanted to do, no, I mean, I would, I was invested by that point as I got older in just doing weird shit on the house, like creeping around my roof at kids and like, while my dad handed out candy below, I was like stalking on the rooftop in like a wig and cloak.
I've never heard of anyone doing that. Did your dad know this was happening when he was handing out candy?
Sometimes. We didn't put in like a big production for like Halloween values like the way that some houses would. Like we never did. Like I one of my core memories is of a guy who had a full scale like mock electric chair set up on Halloween, and he as the kids would approach his house, his wife would, or whoever his accomplice was, would throw the switch and he would be electrocuted, and it was this big flashing strobe light thing, and he would die, and the candy was in his lap. And you would have to go up and take the candy. And then when you went to take a piece of candy, he screamed, and it like, I saw God, and it's like burned into my cortex as like a Halloween memory. And so I was always like, oh, I want to do that. But I was too lazy to like actually put it in production value. So I would always just like skulk around my own property, like peering out from behind trees and stuff just to try and creep people out. Although like would never coordinated any of this or made it any larger. It was always just, being weird.
Reminds me of my friend Chris Fleming is a brilliant comedian. Definitely look him up if you have any. He has a special on Peacock now called Hell. He just had a whole bit about his neighbor in California. The only Halloween decoration they had was just caution tape. And so he spent days thinking that something awful happened at his neighbor's house. And then finally like kind of confronted them about it. So yeah, it's on Instagram. Definitely check that out. I don't remember people decorating for Halloween as a kid for me. I guess they must.
They didn't decorate?
I don't remember that. But again, I never liked
Grinches.
Halloween.
No, that's messed up, man.
Well, I mean, part of the thing with Halloween for me was that I looked like this at like age 9. So, I mean, I would be in like 5th grade and you'd have people like handing out candy saying, aren't you a little old for this? And it'd be like, I'm 9 or whatever.
It's glandular.
Yeah. So it kind of instilled for a guy who was confused because they had always been told not to take candy from strangers, except for this one night of the year when you're told to take candy from strangers. I was already socially awkward and sort of uncomfortable by the whole premise anyway. Having open scorn from the people handing out candy kind of put me off the whole thing. But now I can go to CVS and buy my damn own.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's the true journey to adulthood.
Well, folks, from the candy that Frank Sinatra was buried with, one of my favorite facts of this entire episode, to the iconic candy bar that nearly destroyed a family, to the time Skittles spent millions of dollars on an advertisement that only one person ever got to see, To the wanton acts of animal cruelty at the heart of a gummy classic, here is everything you didn't know about candy.
You know what I like is that Sweetwater sends me candy
Do they?
with my pedals that I buy. Yeah, they put in, but it's like old-timey candy.
Yeah.
It's like Biddo honey. I like Biddo honey.
I do like Biddo
actually.
honey. It will destroy your fillings, but yeah, I do like Biddo honey. How you feel about Mary Jane's?
Which are they? I have a Dad's root beer in right now.
Do you really? This in honor of this episode?
Yeah, I got a pedal. In the mail. So I've just been eating a candy. What is a Mary Jane? How does that different from?
I think Biddo honey is honey, and Mary Jane's I think has peanut butter in it, but it's a similar like taffy thing.
That's fine.
Well, while we're on the topic of old timey candy, we got to start with kind of the granddaddy of candy. Really, if you're thinking about it, it's also sort
heroin.
It's also the worst candy, so it can only go up from here. We're talking about candy corn. Arguably the most divisive candy on this list. Are you pro or anti candy corn?
I'm fine with it.
No, I'm not.
Doesn't offend me. I bet you are.
I'm not. No, I don't like candy corn.
Yeah.
Well, in order to understand the origin of this honey and vanilla flavored treat, let's cast our minds back over 130 years ago to the 1880s. Now, this was an era when a large part of the population lived a very rural existence and worked in agriculture. And around this time, confectioners marketed to this demographic with candies that looked like crops, basically pumpkins, turnips, and corn. It's believed that candy corn was invented, or at least popularized, by a man named George Renninger using sugar, corn syrup, marshmallow, and other ingredients. And way back when he first debuted his candy, it was called chicken feed rather than its more familiar name, because you'll recall that chickens eat dry corn. And the boxes were illustrated with a colorful rooster logo and the tagline, "Something worth crowing for." Now, before automation, making candy corn was a very difficult process, due in large part because of its three colors, white, orange, and yellow. This is hard to imagine now, but it was really revolutionary to have candy that was three different colors. But it made the process of making it really labor intensive. The ingredients were heated until they were melted, and then the hot liquid was poured into buckets, and then employees would have to walk these heavy buckets around and hand pour the liquid into corn kernel-shaped molds. And since candy corn is multi-layered, they would have to repeat this process 3 times, once for each color. And it was such hard work that candy corn was only made several months out of the year for many, many years, around Halloween and Thanksgiving. Now, of course, if the process is automated, candy corn is made all year. In fact, in one 8-hour shift, Jelly Belly, the company that now makes candy corn, can make 28,000 pounds of candy corn, which translates to 9 billion pieces of candy corn a year.
You know how they have those grain silo like drownings that happen in like the Midwest? Yeah. What if that happened with candy corn?
I told you about my friend who almost suffocated on a barrel of rainbow sprinkles. Did I ever tell you about this? Yeah. He was trying to lift this barrel, and everyone was telling him not to because it was too heavy, and he wouldn't listen. And he lifted it up. He was a big guy, and he became top heavy, and he fell backwards in the barrel as he fell, and it was filled with rainbow sprinkles, which I don't think he knew, and they just went up his nose and his open mouth because he was falling backwards. And what a way to go. But candy corn didn't really catch on until after World War II, when trick-or-treating became entrenched in the American psyche, presumably as a way to celebrate the end of wartime sugar rations. That's something I saw come up again and again, was that trick-or-treating was kind of the candy equivalent of Thanksgiving, if you will. But 1950 was a bad year for the Golitz Confectionery Company, who makes candy corn. On September 9th, 1950, while preparing for the Halloween season, the factory in Midland Park, New Jersey caught fire when one of the kettles dripped some of the molten candy batter on the floor. And the result was the biggest candy factory fire in history, as the entire block-long building went up in flames. Thankfully, all 12 workers who were in there at the time managed to get out unharmed, but the fire burned for days, drawing thousands of onlookers. And nearby residents were forced to hose down their homes in order to keep them cool and vaguely flame retardant. The Golitz company lost 2,000 pounds of candy corn that year, but this was possibly for the best, because 6 weeks later during Halloween, kids across the country were stricken with bad diarrhea. as opposed to good diarrhea, and also skin rashes. And these symptoms were actually linked to the consumption of orange dye number 1, which was used as a food coloring in many products at the time in the 50s, including candy corn and also hot dogs. I don't like the thought of candy corn and hot dogs sharing an ingredient. Orange dye number 1 is considered a coal tar dye, which is derived from byproducts of processed coal and also contains benzene, which is toxic. So the dye ended up getting delisted from the FDA, and eventually consumers stopped having violent diarrhea. But fun fact, there's still a kind of gross ingredient in the present recipe of candy corn. The smooth coating on the outside of every piece is made from lac resin, and lac resin is an insect secretion from lac bugs. It's not the actual bug itself, but insect secretion is close enough. These parasites secrete a resin to protect themselves, which is then scraped up and used to give candy corn its shiny look. And it's listed in the ingredients as confectioner's glaze, which is just vague enough. Now, there's a debate about candy corn. Well, there's two debates, whether or not it's good or bad, but the other debate is how do you eat it? According to a survey by the National Confectioners Association, 47% of people just pop the thing in their mouth wholesale. 43% go bunny style and start with the narrow white end first. And
that's weird.
Yeah, I know. That's 43% of people. Wow. And then another 10%, the true weirdos, begin eating the wider yellow end first. But the one thing I want you to take away from this segment, most importantly, I had no idea about this. If you stack candy corn up, if you put it in like a little circle and then stack it up, it really does look exactly like an ear of corn. I could never figure out for the longest time. I couldn't understand why candy corn was candy corn. I didn't realize it was like individual kernels until very recently.
I want to ship you so much candy corn.
It really is like one of the only candies I don't like. But as we're working our way up from the list of worst candies in the world, we got to talk about Tootsie Rolls. I always thought of them as the stems and seeds of any trick-or-treat bag.
I liked the colored ones.
Oh, yeah.
The fruit-flavored ones, although not a vanilla.
Oh, actually, I like the vanilla ones. The cherry ones are good.
Well, Tootsie Rolls were invented by Austrian immigrant Leo Hirschfeld, who started selling the candy for 1 cent in Brooklyn in 1896. He traded up to a proper factory a decade later, but still delivered the candy via horse and buggy, which might sound like a gimmick, but how the hell else were you supposed to do it in 1905?
Yeah, good point.
Prior to inventing the Tootsie Roll, which he named after his daughter Clara's nickname, was he fat-shaming her?
Tootsie?
Oh, I thought it was like a roll. Like he was like, her rolls. I don't know. Old-timey nicknames. We're lucky it's not racial.
Yeah.
Anyway, prior to inventing the Tootsie Roll, Leo Hirschfeld also invented something called bromangulin.
It sounds like...
That's what I call when we record this podcast.
Yeah.
Bromangulin? Bromangulin. Bromangulon. How are you supposed to pronounce it?
I don't know.
It's regarded as the world's first commercially successful gelatin dessert, coming in flavors like raspberry, cherry, and orange. I really thought it was going to be like an orange melon flavor combination, not just a gelatin thing.
You know what? I'm going to look this up. You keep reading. I'll see if I find anything.
So it was essentially a precursor to Jell-O, which makes Mr. Hirschfeld responsible for Jordan's 2 least favorite sweet desserts in history. The interesting thing about Tootsie Rolls, other than the fact that Jordan hates them, is that they were supposedly among the very first candies to be individually wrapped, which was a major hygienic breakthrough at the turn of the century. Another revolutionary element of their design was the fact that they don't melt. In the early 1900s, confectioners struggled to make candy, especially a chocolate-based candy that could stand the heat. Tootsie Rolls were a godsend for chocoholics once warmer weather descended. Longtime Tootsie Roll CEO Melvin Gordon, who died in 2015 at the age of 95, insisted that Tootsie Rolls were essentially indestructible, telling the Associated Press in 1996, "Nothing can happen to a Tootsie Roll. We have some that were made in 1938 that we still eat. If you can't bite it when it's that old, you can certainly lick it."
Words to live by.
Wise words. Wise words coming from that old guy.
Wait, I got a bromangelon update here. Wait, I have something in my ear right now. I'm getting a bromangelon update. Well, hang on. Okay, the origin of the name is unknown. It was claimed by representatives of the manufacturer that its name meant angel's food. But in a 1903 edition of the American Druggist and Pharmaceutical Record, they reported a significantly different etymology. A foul spirit. From bromos, a stench, and angelus, a messenger, angel, or spirit.
You named your dessert after an evil fart.
In some advertisements,
unforced air.
In some advertisements, the name was broken up as Bro Man Gel On, one of us. This may have been in order to make the long name easy to remember or pronounce.
Bromangelon, biblically accurate dessert. Be not afraid. The Tootsie Roll's freakish chemical endurance and bizarre quasi-wax-like consistency would later lead to their use in the army, not as weapons. Beginning in World War II, Tootsie Rolls became semi-officially contracted to the U.S. government to produce the candy for inclusion in GI rations, since their durability and packaging made them well-suited to be eaten in all manner of U.S. interventionist wars. They were like a primitive version of an energy bar. During the Korean War, these little gobs of chocolate eidolons actually saved lives. American soldiers were caught stranded by the Chosin Reservoir, nearly out of mortar shells, so the troops called for an airdrop using the code name they'd established for their artillery, Tootsie Rolls.
Because they look like bullets.
To their surprise,
during the Korean War, and they look like bullets.
Jordan, let me finish.
Sorry.
To their surprise, when the airdrop arrived, it was filled not with ammunition, but with actual Tootsie Rolls, which is bad. And making matters worse, they arrived frozen. They were still able to be eaten, though, and presumably were probably an efficient weapon at that point if you used them in some kind of a sling, like a David and Goliath kind of situation.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But some enterprising soldier, who honestly deserves a Congressional Medal of Honor for this, came up with the idea of heating up the Tootsie Rolls in their mouths and transforming them into a kind of paste, which could be used to patch bullet holes in trucks, hoses, and other equipment, according to Ripley's Believe It or Not, anyway. But their vehicle,
they're all just like, oh, this stuff sucks. Oh, God. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, wait, we could use this.
With their vehicles thusly fixed, with the waxy, salival chocolate paste, the men collected their injured and frostbitten comrades, broke a hole through enemy lines, and retreated to safety. The men who survived the battle started calling themselves the Chosen Few. And that is not bullshit. That is verified, by the way. As has the story of Frederick Arnold, who was a U.S. pilot shot down over the Sahara, who survived for 3 days on rations of Tootsie Rolls. Wow. But nobody's ever used one to kill someone?
Well, there's two kinds of Tootsie Rolls. There's the little bite-sized ones that are like, an inch or whatever. And aren't there like long stick-like, almost like jerky ones too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm confused, like, which is what we're talking about here. I guess if they were individually wrapped, it's probably the tiny ones.
Wow, man. Sometimes I really do love this country.
What? Did you just look up, has anyone killed anyone with Tootsie Rolls?
No, but I did just find a guy who loaded on YouTube who loaded a Tootsie Roll into a shotgun shell.
Cool.
And is now using it to punch holes in what appears to be, it's a plank of wood. It will at least go through a plank of wood. And,
that doesn't surprise me.
And a beer can. What else is he shooting?
Is it intact?
The Tootsie Roll? No, it does not survive the impact. But holy shit, man, he did a number on that Miller Lite can. Wow. God bless America. There are numerous famous fans of Tootsie Rolls, disgusting though they may be. According to Tootsie Roll Industries bigwig Ellen Gordon, Jackie Kennedy, Onassis, used to like to keep a bowl full of the candies around the office at Doubleday Publishing House in New York City because they served as a good icebreaker.
How do you feel about that?
I don't give a shit about anything anymore. What? That is a weird foible, man. Is this? It's like the Reagan thing or the Nixon thing?
What was the Reagan thing with the jelly beans?
Yeah,
I think he just
as like
really
a weird
liked jelly beans.
Okay. Well, as we mentioned in the Thriller episode, Jackie Kennedy Onassis was editor of Michael Jackson's autobiography Moonwalker, which means it's not a real stretch to imagine that he might have had some of her Tootsie Roll. Frank Sinatra also insisted on Tootsie Rolls as part of his backstage rider, which also included a color TV, various liquors, and an assortment of sandwiches. In fact, he loved the candy so much he was allegedly buried with a few Tootsie Rolls tossed into his coffin, along with a few other choice effects, including cigarettes, a lighter, and a bottle of Jack Daniels.
What would you like to be buried with?
You. It doesn't matter which of us dies first.
I was just going to say.
The company is... The company that produces Tootsie Rolls is shrouded in secrecy, according to the Wall Street Journal. They're infamous for turning down press inquiries. It also neglects to hold quarterly earnings calls. Per Slate, the company's succession plan became the topic of news headlines when then CEO Melvin Gordon died in 2015 at the age of 95. Eyewitnesses to his death reported that his eyes had gone completely black. He was levitating 3 feet above the ground, speaking in a language that seemed to them older than time itself. Sorry, what? Control of the company went to his wife Ellen, who told Joel Glenn Brenner for his book, Emperors of Chocolate, Inside the Secret World of Hershey and Mars, "We want Tootsie to remain independent. Hopefully our children, or the employees working in the company, will be able to run it someday. The Tootsie Rolls Corporation has not forgotten the old gods." According to Bloomberg, investors think Gordon may eventually sell the company. The Wall Street Journal noted that shareholders are the only ones who are privy to the succession plan, and there has been no sign that any of Gordon's 4 daughters will take over. Gordon and her children combined own more than 60% of the company, according to Forbes. What if suddenly they break down the Tootsie Roll factory, or it explodes or something, and it's revealed that they have some kind of hideous Stygian, eldritch, Lovecraftian demon chained up in the basement that just poops these things out like a queen bee, and it's just been trapped
H.R.
there.
Giger cover, album cover,
Yeah, exactly. It's they feed it each CEO. That's the last act of any Tootsie Roll CEO. They strip naked, they paint sigils on themselves, and then they go down and are ritualistically devoured by the Tootsie Beast.
Buys them another 15 years of plentiful Tootsie Roll production.
The harvest. The Tootsie must roll. 64 million Tootsie Rolls get made
Can't be
each
wrong.
day. That's more than 44,440 per minute. 740 per second come out of the Tootsie Monster's sphincter. That is incredible.
He cut it to the Bono thing. It's like, every time I snap my fingers,
Yeah,
1,000 Tootsie Rolls
comes out.
Well, stop snapping your fingers.
Stop bleeding, snap. Stop bleeding, clapping.
What is the origin of that? But it was, first of all, it was Bono, right? And was that just
Supposedly. You've asked me this before. I don't know. I don't care. Tell me about the Tootsie Roll Pop.
See, as much as I hate Tootsie Rolls, I love Tootsie Pops. My hatred of Tootsie Rolls is inversely
It's a
proportionate.
disgusting candy. It's a
Really?
lollipop, and then you have the Tootsie Roll at the center.
I mean, the Tootsie Roll at the center I could take or leave, but the cherry Tootsie Pops, great. What are you talking about? What's your favorite lollipop?
I don't have one because I'm not 6.
You like blow
Lollipop.
pops, don't you? Ring pops. Ring popping son of a bitch.
I like Chupa Chups, actually.
Oh, that's
Actually, I do like Ring Pops, yeah. But
Ring
Chupa
Pops
Chups are good.
Oh, that's like fancy.
It's an import? There's an import.
Yeah, the import, yeah. Wow. See, you can't just find those anywhere. You see that? Wow. I didn't expect that of you. I thought you were like a Charms blow pop kind of guy. You're more of a man of the people. The Chupa Chips I did not expect. Well, I love Tootsie Pops, which were first introduced in 1931. It was invented by Luke Weisgram, who was an employee at the then named Sweet Company of America, which produced Tootsie Roll. And he and his colleagues were asked to pitch ideas for a new candy at a meeting. And the idea came to Weisgram because he had tasted his daughter's lollipop while chewing a chocolate Tootsie Roll at the same time. He thought that this flavor combo went well together. Linguistic fun fact, the word lolly in lollipop derives from the Old English dialect term for the tongue. Did you know that?
Gross.
Yeah, kind of. I haven't
Isn't
really thought about it.
Lollapalooza originally refers to a lollipop, right? It's like the comically large, old-timey spiral lollipop that like your little little Lord
Orphan Annie.
Fauntleroy would have been enjoying on his way to kick the pores.
I don't know. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Really?
I believe so. I mean,
why did they call it that?
Because Perry Farrell was on God knows how many drugs.
Oh, yeah.
I was incorrect. Wow, where did I get that from?
What does it mean?
Yeah, strike all that. Anyway, Lollapalooza apparently means an archaic word meaning extraordinarily impressive, and he heard it in a Three Stooges short.
Well, the first thing that you think about when you think of a Tootsie Pop is that professorial owl in the animated ad. That commercial was designed in 1968 by the Detroit-based Donner Ad Company in an effort to get people to eat Tootsie Pops, like literally eat them. Premise being if people bite the Tootsie Pops, that means it would last a lot shorter than they would. They would have to buy more. This gave birth to the age-old advertising question, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
One.
And it's
a two.
A two.
3.
That's the voice of Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, Paul Winchell.
Huh.
Yeah. One big fan of Mr. Owl from those ads is Pete Davidson. He has a massive tattoo of the Tootsie Pop owl on his back. Did you know that?
That guy throws darts at a book of idiot things. Wow, I'm suffering today. I'm off my game. That's how he picks his tattoos. From the dictionary of stupid opens a page, and my name's right next to it. Cut all this. I'm off my game. Get back to the fucking stupid.
That's good. The first part was good. Although I guess he's getting them all removed now because now that he's getting into, inverted commas, serious acting, it takes roughly 3 hours to cover up his tattoos with makeup. So I guess he's decided that. So no word on whether or not the Tootsie Pop owl remains on his back. More at 11. When it comes to answering that infamous question, the mysterious Tootsie Pop manufacturers aren't any help. According to the company's website, the real answer to how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, quote, depends on a variety of factors, such as the size of your mouth, the amount of saliva, etc. What could the etc. be? Heat?
Yeah. This is all so potentially R-rated.
The Tootsie Pop website also offers a PDF for a clean stick certificate on their website.
I got one of those once. Clean stick certificate?
Yeah, you really?
Had to go to the doctor.
Many studies have attempted to find the exact answer of how many licks it takes using volunteers and even...
And even what, Jordan?
I can't. There are some things even I'm unable to say. Customized licking machines, Heigl. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, those things.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The results.
They have one of those at the Tootsie Roll factory to moisten the Tootsie Beast's hide.
That's one of the more.
You have to clean them off. When the new Tootsie Beast is born from the corpse of the old one, you have to clean them off like a mother cat does to the kittens. So that's where the customized licking machines come in. They're made with cow tongues.
I can't tell if that last part's serious or not.
Yeah, it's basically you just take a cow tongue and you stick it on a
popsicle stick.
Yeah, and like a robot arm, and then they, because this is many miles underground because they can't let it get too close to the surface or else it tastes freedom. And then it's remote control. Like obviously OSHA has rules about how close you can get to the Tootsie Beast. So, your higher level executives are rotated in to pilot the customized licking machines to clean off the new Tootsie Beast. It does cause a bit of a hiccup in production.
Actually, it's not about OSHA. They go that far underground because it's like going out in international waters. They're the only company that actually goes so far deep underground that it no longer technically counts as the United States. It's actually part of the Earth's mantle.
That's where Jimmy Hoffa's buried. They fed Jimmy Hoffa to the Tootsie Beast. It was a good 5-year period where you could get a little bit of Hoffa in every Tootsie Roll. Amelia
Earhart. Anastasia. It's about 1,000 licks, okay? I don't know how to cut around that. So, yeah, it's somewhere between 400 and 1,000 licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. Sure. Now, okay, this actually, I am very excited about this. So if you're like me, which I pray to God you're not, you still get excited when you have a Tootsie Pop. I'm 35 years old, and you unwrap it, and you look at the wrapper, and you see a Native American, a First Nation individual shooting a bow and arrow at a star. Because for generations, it's been ingrained in our minds that if you get a Tootsie Pop wrapper with a star on it, you bring that wrapper to the store, a corner store in my mind, not like a CVS, and you get a freebie Tootsie Pop. That's like the thing that was just, I don't even know where I heard that. It's just, we're all born with it now. This is apparently a lie, and that wrapper is worthless. No one knows how this rumor got started, but Tootsie Roll Industries have never in the history of Tootsie Pops honored this. On their website, they actually have a section called The Legend of the Shooting Star, which gently debunks this legend. It says, in fact, the shooting star appears on 1 in every 4 to 6 Tootsie Pop wrappers just as frequently as the other images appear. However, we do believe the star is a sign of good luck to come and a good harvest for the Tootsie Beast.
And a clean death for its next meal.
Okay, well, now we're moving on to candy bars, and we're going to start with the Milky Way. The Milky Way was the first major success for Frank Mars of Mars Incorporated, and it would eventually tear his family apart. But more on this in a moment. The creation of the Milky Way can be linked to the popularity of milkshakes, specifically malted milk. In the late 1800s, milk farming was scaling up, but the pasteurization regulations hadn't yet passed in most states, so it was believed that milk wasn't safe to drink. So malted milk tablets were marketed as a good substitute for your health, especially for babies, and the popularity of malted milk rose in the 1880s due in large part to the temperance movement. So malted milk, specifically chocolate malted milk, became a hit at soda fountains across the country. And before going hard for the whole celestial thing, Milky Way's candy bars were billed as a double malted milk in a candy bar. Hence the name Milky Way. So it wasn't named after the galaxy at all. It was actually named after a very specific, famous malted milk drink from the 1920s. So the Milky Way was born, as you might guess, during father-son time at a local soda fountain. But this story is not as sweet as it sounds. These two men were Frank C. Mars, the founder of Mars Incorporated, and his son Forrest. Now, the official version of the story, told by the company, is that father and son developed it together while sharing a malt at a soda shop. That's very sweet. In truth, the pair were not close and would spend the remainder of their lives arguing about who was responsible for the family fortune. Forrest, the son, was born during Frank Mars's failed first marriage, and when his parents split when he was 6, he was sent to live with his grandparents, and father and son didn't see each other for 20 years. In fact, it was apparently not until Frank had to bail Forrest out of a Chicago jail. I'm not sure why. So chances are they were not having an adorable Norman Rockwell father-son moment at a malt shop when they dreamed up the Milky Way. And throughout his life, Forrest Mars would claim that even though his father had been the one that actually manufactured the Milky Way bar, it was his idea, and he came up with the name himself. They would have a falling out, and Forrest would move to England to try to start his own competing confectionery business. And while there, he actually created the Mars Bar and Maltesers, which is another, chocolate malt balls. And he quite possibly got the idea for M&Ms when he was living in England, when he stumbled across a British candy called Smarties, which they still have over there. It's like the British equivalent of M&Ms. Eventually, Forrest Mars returned to the U.S., started Uncle Ben's rice brand in the interim, and then finally took over Mars Incorporated.
So that guy was definitely racist.
Yeah. But we are getting ahead of ourselves here. The pair were feuding because the Milky Way bar was a huge hit upon its commercial release in 1924. Sales of the bar skyrocketed to $800,000 in its first year. And that's 1924. So in today dollars, that would be well over $10 million. By 1929, the Milky Way had become the most popular candy bar in the United States, and this was partially because it was also the biggest. Today's Milky Way bar is just over 1.8 ounces, but the original Milky Way weighed more than 3 ounces, which is pretty hefty. Pretty hefty. As Forrest Mars explained, people would walk up to the candy counter and see this flat little Hershey bar for a nickel, and right next to it, a giant Milky Way. Guess which one they'd pick? Now, we know that malted milk is not exactly a universal panacea, but the ads for Milky Way continued to tout the supposed health properties for years. Back in the 60s, Mars ran a TV ad that linked Milky Way bars to wholesome farm ingredients like fresh eggs and corn. And the most egregious example of this was an ad that depicted a pitcher of milk transforming into a Milky Way bar. And the FTC felt that this technically constituted false advertising and issued a consent order in 1970, basically saying that it wasn't okay to equate a candy bar with a glass of fresh milk. Despite this, Mars kept linking Milky Ways with milk. There was a 1984 ad that continued to claim that each Milky Way has the equivalent of a quarter cup of milk.
Trying to find out who Uncle Ben was.
He lives in all of us. You mean like the model or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have no idea. It can't be good. It can't be a good story.
No, according to the New York Times, it was not actually the Mars guy, Forrest Mars. It was Texas food broker Gordon L. Harwell. He had basically supplied the armed forces with rice during World War II and was looking for a way to expand it in the post-war boom years. And during a meeting in Chicago, which would lend credence to it being Forrest Mars.
It's the Chicago-based company, Mars.
Yeah. He just saw a portrait of the restaurant's maitre d', Frank Brown, and decided that will be the mascot of my new rice company.
Did this maitre d' get some kind of residual?
Oh, my goodness, no. You fool. As you meditate on that, we'll be right back with more Too Much Information after these messages. All right, where are you? Where the f*** are we? Oh, okay, sorry. Snickers, one of my favorites. This is all but a preamble for Mars, the Mars chocolate H-bomb that blasted away the competition. Snickers. It is, per you, citing other sources, the best-selling candy bar in the world with global sales of 3.6 billion. See, this is what I mean when I say I'm a basic bitch. I like Snickers. The initial idea came from a pre-existing snack consisting of nougat, peanut, and caramel. Frank Mars, that wily old bastard, added chocolate, put it in bar form, and started selling it wholesale. By this point, he was already wildly successful thanks to the Milky Way bar, and so he named his greatest creation after the trappings of his success. He had been so poor that it's generally understood that this is why his first wife, Ethel, Forrest's mom, left him. When he became a candy titan, he married a new wife, also named Ethel, which is weird. And together, they purchased a 3,000-acre farm in Tennessee that they dubbed, of course, Milky Way Farms, with a staff of over 100. Ethel's favorite animal on the farm was a racehorse named Snickers. And when the creature died shortly before this new and improved version of Milky Way with the peanuts went into production, the Mars couple decided to name it after Snickers in tribute. And they still use a tiny little portion of him in every Snickers bar that goes out today. When Snickers was first released, there was quite a bit of controversy surrounding its price. At the time, candy bars cost 5 cents. The Snickers bar was sold for a whopping 20 cents. And this could be because, like Milky Way, was physically larger than most of the competitors. And plus, each bar boasted 16 peanuts. In 2020, to celebrate the bar's 90th birthday, they upped the ante and earned themselves a place in the Guinness Book of World Records by making a Snickers bar with 3,500 pounds of milk chocolate and 1,200 pounds of peanuts, caramel, and nougat. It was the equivalent of 41,000 regular Snicker bars and would be consumed by the 600 Mars Wrigley workers in Waco, Texas, who helped make it. That's just a weird thing that I just said and then pictured in my mind's eye.
It's like a car. It's a Snickers bar the size of a car.
Just like, what are you marching or what do you punch into work? You know, you're trying to just send your kids to school and you find out you got to make a Snickers bar the size of a car and then eat it. You already got diabetes because you work for Mars, and you know, doctor said you're probably going to lose your foot, but you can't lose this job. You got kids to feed. You know, one of them wants to go to NYU to study screenwriting. So
you make the giant chocolate bar.
Yeah,
and then
weeping,
you eat the giant chocolate bar.
Yeah, your salty tears mingle with the peanuts.
Here's what I don't like.
Look down at the lines on your hands and think, what happened to that young man who used to swim in the streams outside of Waco and play baseball? I don't even recognize him when I look in the mirror at night.
I don't recognize my hands. They're the hands of an old man.
Grandma's
tired
hands.
The way that this giant Snickers bar was divided up, you have to almost cut it like a cake. And the thought of eating a giant Snickers bar with a fork and knife is gross.
Yeah. Do you have stuff in here about the dick vein?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Unfortunately for Snickers, they did not hold the record long. Poor Jim Bob lost his foot for nothing. Reese's Take 5 stole the record just a couple weeks later. That's a good candy bar. Love me a Take 5.
What's Take 5? I don't know Take 5.
An animal. You absolute rube. You fool. You fool of a tooth.
Was that like 5 Alive?
It's Take 5. It's 5 layers of sweet and salty goodness that doesn't ask you to compromise. It's crunchy pretzels, smooth peanut butter, salty peanuts, and sweet caramel, all covered in a chocolate coating. Grab this snack the next time you want to mix things up.
That veers too close to savory for me.
That's why it's good. What is your aversion to the salty-sweet combination?
That's what we are.
Papa?
Wait, the tagline for the Take 5. Okay, this is just validating me. The tagline, at least according to the Wikipedia page, the best bar you've never heard of.
They're great. Take 5 stole the record just a couple weeks later. On the other extreme, you read a report that Milky Way and Snickers were the first proper fun-sized chocolate bars, and a scourge on Halloween that has remained unaddressed. Baby Ruth, which we will get to, had been released as a junior version in the 30s, but the fun-sized version of Milky Way and Snickers, released in 1968, were slightly bigger.
And I think they were the first ones that actually used the term fun-sized.
If you hand out fun-sized at Halloween, you know, you're part of the problem.
Wait, really? You handed out full-size candy bars? That was like only like, yeah?
In 2023, no, I would have to mortgage my house with the way inflation is. I'm talking about back in the day.
Oh, there was like just one neighborhood in my town that you knew had a couple houses that handed out full-size candy bars. And you went there, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was, by and large, you got the fun size.
Yeah. But scaling down the size of their candy bar in a nod towards the then novel health consciousness sweeping the nation must have had the folks at Snickers feeling cocky, veiny, vascular, swollen.
Engorged
on the sense of their own self-importance. Because in 1984, they ponied up $4 million, a shitload of free candy, to become the official snack food of the 1984 Olympics. Wasn't that the one that Munich happened at? Or is that 80?
No, that was 72.
Yeah. What happened at 84? Anything?
I think the Russians boycotted.
Is that the one the Russians boycotted?
Yeah.
Health experts were not pleased. Dietitian Edward C. Goodstein said at the time, "The present labeling is misleading in that it leads consumers to believe that these candies are endorsed by the Olympic Games as a nutritious snack food choice." He and the other nutritionists were concerned that the promotion would lead, quote, little kids to figure that if they eat Snickers or M&Ms, they will become athletes. Who's to say they won't? This sounds absurd, but there were commercials airing at the time that had professional alpine skier Carl Anderson saying that eating a Snickers allows me to concentrate on downhill. First of all, pick a real sport. Second of all, concentrate on downhill. That is the entirety of your sport. Snickers doubled down on the bad press, enlisting their own candy nutritionists. Is that like being a concentration camp doctor?
Holy shit.
Snickers doubled down on the bad press and enlisting their own candy nutritionist to defend the sponsorship. Athletes do have greater demand for energy, and candy is one way to get it, a Mr. Dr. Daniel Rosenfield said. However, spurred on by public health campaigns like Michelle Obama's 2012 Let's Move initiative, Mars decided that it would work to combat the childhood obesity epidemic by reducing the size of the standard 280-calorie Snickers bars by 12%. That's when the woke war began. All this being said, at least one Snickers bar somewhere was credited with saving a man's life. Colorado outdoorsman Christian George was on a snowmobiling trip when he got separated from his group and buried in an avalanche, according to Steamboat Pilot and Today. The only things he had in his pockets at the time were 2 cigarette lighters and a Snickers. When I stopped for gas in the morning, I picked up a little pint of orange juice and a king-size Snickers bar. And unfortunately, I left a pint of orange juice in my car, George told CBS. He freed himself, though, and spent 4 days crawling through the waist-deep snow until he was spotted by a helicopter. And in order to keep his strength up, George rationed his Snickers bar 1 bite at a time. Though he did lose 23 pounds during this ordeal, he likely would have starved to death without the Snickers. And in a pitch-perfect coda to this story, George was reportedly busted for illegally growing weed a week later. Cannot make this stuff up.
Well, in addition to the controversy at the Olympics, there was also controversy for Snickers on the small screen. Snickers ads have an uncanny knack for generating a furor, most notably the ad that aired on February 4th, 2007 during the Super Bowl, Roman numerals 41. The commercial showed a pair of mechanics accidentally kissing while sharing a Snickers bar. After quickly pulling away, one mechanic sheepishly says to the other, "I think we just accidentally kissed." And then the other mechanic frantically exclaims, "Quick, do something manly." In 3 of the 4 versions of this commercial, the manly thing takes the form of an injury, including tearing out chest hair, striking each other with very large pipe wrenches, and drinking motor oil and windshield washer fluid. However, in the 4th version of this ad, a 3rd mechanic pops up and asks, "Is there room for 3 in this love boat?" The ad drew complaints from gay and lesbian groups who felt, rightfully so, that the ads were homophobic. Human Rights Campaign President Joel Somonese is quoted as saying, "This type of jeering from professional sports figures at the sight of 2 men kissing fuels the kind of anti-gay bullying that haunts countless gay and lesbian school children on playgrounds all across the country." Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation President Neil Giuliano said that Snickers, Mars, and NFL would promote and endorse this kind of prejudice is simply inexcusable. The ad was later pulled from Snickers' website and presumably the airwaves. But Snickers apparently didn't learn from this incident because there was a similar response to an ad that aired just the following year in the UK. This 2008 spot featured Mr. T. Even just describing this, I've watched it. It is wild. Features Mr. T trailing an effeminate speedwalker in his tricked out truck and shooting Snickers bars at the speedwalker from a gun, like a Gatling gun, while calling him, quote, "a disgrace to the man race," and screaming at him to, quote, "run like a real man." And the slogan for this campaign was, "Get some nuts," in case it was too subtle a point.
Yeah, what was the ad agency responsible for this?
Who are the ad wizards who came up with this one? I'm not sure. Presumably they have high profile lawyers, so I won't even, it's probably best not to mention. Shockingly to me, this advertisement only received 2 complaints in the UK from viewers, but it was also criticized by the Human Rights Campaign as a portrayal of violence against the LGBTQ community. Also, unrelated, Snickers had caused controversy in the UK from the very beginning for a whole other reason. When the product was first launched across the pond, many in Britain felt that the name Snickers sounded a little too much like knickers, which was rude. So it wasn't until 1990 that it became known as Snickers in the UK. Until then, Snickers was known as the Marathon Bar. I possibly because of the thing we talked about at the Olympics where it gave people energy, where the nuts gave people energy. I don't know.
I mean, that ad was BBDO, which is like
what?
Yeah,
one of the big. Yeah. Wow.
Some guy got made more money than either you and I make combined in a year.
Oh, in our entire lives for that ad, I'm sure.
What's that Bill Hicks line? If anybody in the audience works in marketing or advertising, kill yourselves. Not a joke, just a public service announcement.
Well, in addition to the UK, Snickers has inadvertently offended people really all over the world. Some of these offenses were relatively minor. Case in point, the Welsh. Friend of the pod, the Welsh. In 2020, the Snickers UK brand tweeted, "A place in Wales or someone sat on the keyboard, a thread," and commented with names like, I'm not even going to try to say that.
Look, we all know that Welsh is an interesting language. We all know it.
It was low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, come on.
The tweet was quickly deleted, but not before causing an outrage on Welsh Twitter, which apparently is a thing. Some Twitter comments called this tweet an insult to the Welsh language and culture, while others planned to boycott Snickers entirely. Meanwhile, some comments stood up for the Snickers brand, calling the tweet a harmless joke. Hours after the tweet was deleted, Snickers UK posted an apology on Twitter praising the loyalty of their Welsh fans. But that was nothing compared to what happened just last year in 2022 when Snickers inadvertently offended the Chinese government when one of their ads for a collaboration with K-pop band BTS referred to Taiwan as a country independent from China. Mars quickly apologized for the misstep, adding that the brand, quote, respects China's national sovereignty and traditional and territorial integrity, and that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. This is according to the Taipei Times. For those who don't know, that is a hotly contested matter within the Taiwanese community who are struggling to be recognized as an independent nation. China, this is such a ridiculous thing to say.
No, read
it. Accepted Snickers' apology. But other members of the international community were irate. Fans on Twitter slammed Snickers' parent company, Mars Wrigley, for caving into the, quote, bullies and not acknowledging the loaded past between China and Taiwan. And this controversy came just as U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi was visiting Taiwan, thus straining ties between U.S. and China on this very high-stakes visit, which was poised to discuss things like climate change. So,
Speaker Pelosi, what do you have to say about Snickers?
But shockingly, this would not be the first time that Snickers played a semi-major role on the world stage. In 2019, Snickers joined a movement to officially make Halloween the last Saturday in October for trick-or-treat purposes. In addition to pledging their support, they also put money and chocolate where their mouth is. They shared a tweet that read, "A Thursday Halloween? Not satisfying. Halloween on the last Saturday of October? Satisfying. If the federal government makes it official, we'll offer 1 million free Snickers to America." This was not enough to get the federal government to change the official day of Halloween.
Can't fight Halloween. It's bigger than all of us.
Yeah. Heigl, do you want to talk about the Snicker veins?
I sure do. Two things about Snickers that offend Jordan. Veins and salad. Aside from its nuts. Snickers is, you wrote this. Why are you guffawing at your own jokes?
You deliver it so much better.
Snickers is famous. Snickers are famous? Snickers are famous for what their fans have dubbed the veins or decorative chocolate drizzle. We'll get to Twizzlers.
Decorative veins or drizzle is just the grossest combination of words I've ever heard you say.
I'm going to read it again. Aside from their nuts, Snickers are famous for what fans have dubbed the veins or decorative chocolate drizzle on the top of the bar. In 2022, a photo of a shockingly veinless bar, smooth like a baby's bottom, went viral on Twitter, leading to rampant speculation and, in many cases, outright disinformation. Someone even created a fake screenshot of conservative commentator Tucker Carlson slamming the so-called woke mob for insisting that the allegedly sexually suggestive veins be removed. Some fans thought it was real. Not a big stretch, because Carlson had recently gone on a rant about the desexualization of the M&M's mascots.
I thought it was sexualization of the M&M's mouth. Again,
Was she made too sexy or
rem-
not sexy? I thought they were upset that they made her not sexy, the green M&M.
I thought they were upset that they made her sexy, which is completely contradicting his problem with making Snickers not sexy.
I've gone
By
cross-eyed.
removing the vein.
In response to the outcry, Snickers assured fans that the veins were as engorged as ever, going nowhere, able to be seen through the thickest of gray sweatpants. In response to the confusion, a former Mars Wrigley plant worker explained that the iconic veins are made using a decorator belt, and sometimes a bar might miss that process. An agender Snickers, just a non-vascular Snickers, a flaccid Snickers. And, oh God, speaking of state fair food, Snickers salad.
Yeah.
There's no segue for this. I'm just going to say it. Snickers salad in Iowa, of course, consists of whipped cream, pudding, Granny Smith apples, and chopped up Snickers bars. What kind of pudding? Vanilla?
Either banana or vanilla, one or the other, yeah.
You know, that's fine. I would eat that. Vanilla. I would eat vanilla. I know if it has to be made with, because otherwise it's too much chocolate.
Yeah, no, it's not chocolate. It's not chocolate pudding.
Okay.
It's some kind of, but it wouldn't sound bad if it wasn't called salad.
Yeah, but salad is
Honestly.
like is there, as you edge into the Midwest, they call anything that's just got like more than
In a
three,
bowl.
and more than 3 ingredients salad. You ever had ambrosia that's like,
Yeah.
like the gross canned mandarin oranges and like marshmallows and all whipped into a disgusting lather?
As much as I like exotic, gross desserts, that's kind of where I draw the line. They don't call that salad, though. They call that ambrosia.
Shut up. You.
Let's move on to one of my all-time favorites, Kit Kat bars. Now, the name Kit Kat has a surprisingly highbrow pedigree.
You like Kit Kats?
I love Kit Kats.
Why?
You don't?
They're just so
Great.
boring.
What do you mean they got wafers in them?
That's it.
The chocolate's good.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. I'm learning all kinds of things about each other here in this
Again,
bromangelin.
first date question.
Bromangelin. In this bromangelin excursion we're having here.
Well, okay. I mean, so you like Snickers. See, Snickers I don't like because there's too much going on.
Yeah.
It's just too chaotic. It's the same reason I don't like Beat It on Michael Jackson's Thriller. It's just it's too loud. Same reason I didn't put Skittles in with Sprite. You gotta let's do the one at a time.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Yeah. But the Kit Kat was named after the Kit Kat Club, which was a 17th century assembly of British Whig Party supporters, artists, and literary figures who met at a pie shop run by pastry chef Christopher Catling, which is the most British sentence I've ever read. The club's name, Kit Kat Club, was a reference to Catling's famous mutton pies, which everyone called Kit Kats, an abbreviation of his name. Kit is diminutive of Christopher, and Cat short for Catling. The name Kit Kat Club ultimately became synonymous in Britain with political and social discourse. 2 centuries later, at the beginning of the 1900s, British candy maker Joseph Rowntree, co-founder of the famous Rowntree Candy Company, trademarked the name, and no one's really sure if it was a nod to this bit of British history. There's also a rumor that he liked the name because it was a reference to his wife's sorority days and was actually an acronym for Keep in Touch, Kit, Kappa Alpha Theta, her sorority, Kit Kat. Regardless, Kit Kat became a popular phrase again in Jazz Age London. There was a nightclub named after it as well as a band. And eventually, in 1937, Kit Kat was used to rechristen Rowntree's Chocolate Crisp Bar. Now, the distinctively shaped bar was first made in 1935 after an employee put a note in the chocolate company's suggestion box requesting, quote, I love this, a chocolate bar that a man could take to work in his pack-up or lunch bag. This was an era when candy was basically seen as meal replacements and marketed as, quote, good food. You would see that phrase in a lot of ads. And rappers would boast fresh ingredients, like Milky Way we talked about earlier. They boasted fresh eggs and milk. Basically, candy bars were viewed as early energy bars. And so for workers who didn't want to take the time to sit down and have a full lunch, especially if they're getting paid hourly, a candy bar was the solution for just a quick, cheap, easy lunch. Roundtree's marketed Kit Kat bars as, quote, the biggest little meal in Britain. But they also made an attempt to appeal to people who just preferred it as a snack and not as a meal replacement. And they came up with a slogan, the best companion to a cup of tea. So there's thoughts that when they rebranded the chocolate crisp to Kit Kat, that phrase of, people in a club all gathered together having discourse, the camaraderie was meant to signify the enjoyment of a shared break. So that's what's believed to be the meaning of the name Kit Kat. The wafer filling in Kit Kat was not just for taste. Since biscuits were cheaper than cocoa, it helped keep the cost of the Kit Kat bar down, which meant that it was an affordable working man's chocolate bar. The biscuit is baked in a rigidly controlled environment to ensure proper crisp, and rejected bars are ground up and used as filling in new bars, which makes the manufacturing process surprisingly eco-friendly and zero waste.
Or like a human centipede.
Making its third appearance on today's episode. Kit Kats were always a very socially conscious candy bar. During World War II, a shortage of milk forced Roundtree's to switch from milk chocolate to dark chocolate in its Kit Kat bars. And to signify the change, the company changed the wrapper from red to blue with a somber message on the front that read, "This product is made with plain chocolate. Our standard chocolate crisp will be reintroduced as soon as milk is available." And they even changed their ad copy at this time to very kind of dour things like no more chocolate crisp until after the war, which is kind of like an anti-advertisement, really. In the 50s, manufacturing innovations helped get the Kit Kat bars firm enough so that the little fingers could be broken apart with a distinctive snap. And this inspired an ad man with the J. Walter Thompson firm in London, who combined the breaking sound with the company's long-running tea break theme to develop the slogan, "Have a break, have a Kit Kat." This was first used during a television ad in 1958, and the phrase is still used in British ads today. But American fans will be more familiar with the version that has been playing in this country since 1986. I'm afraid to even say it because it'll put that earworm in your head. Give me a break, break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Researchers at the University of Cincinnati polled several hundred subjects to discover that song is ranked one of the highest earworms in history, alongside YMCA, Who Let the Dogs Out, and the Mission Impossible theme.
Kit Kat aficionados, or anyone who ever studied abroad, and jury's still out on which of those two are more annoying as a subgroup, will know that there's a huge difference between European and American Kit Kats. That is because they're made by two very different companies. Roundtree's licensed the Kit Kat name for the American market. For them, this was a win-win since Roundtree's got exposure for their candy bar and Hershey's got a new product. This deal is contracted in perpetuity. So when Nestle acquired Roundtree's in 1988, it honored the original agreement, but with one stipulation. Nestle would regain the rights to the Kit Kat if Hershey's ever attempted to sell itself to another business. In essence, Nestle would steal back the recipe if Hershey's ever joined a bigger company. It was, and has continued to be, an effective way to stop Hershey's from going into business talks with a competitor. If Hershey's lost Kit Kat, it would lose one of its biggest products, ultimately lowering the company's worth. Most people say that the European version is better and clearly has higher quality ingredients, but Jordan, for the record, prefers the American one.
It's the Red Vines versus Twizzlers. Red Vines are worse, but they're better.
Very good. We can't talk about foreign Kit Kats, though, without discussing Japan. I don't think that there's ever been a country that has loved a candy product more than Japan loves Kit Kat bars. The headline for a 2018 New York Times piece says it all. In Japan, the Kit Kat isn't just a chocolate, it's an obsession. I would have sent that one back. Isn't just a chocolate? Who the says that? New York Times. Paper of record, my ass.
In Japan, Kit Kat breaks you.
There it was. Now we're talking. It began in the 1970s. Kit Kat 2, Electric Boogaloo. It began in the 1970s, but the brand had a stroke of good luck because the phrase Kit Kat is very similar to the Japanese phrase Kitu Katsu, which translates to surely win. This led the candy bar to be embraced as a sort of good luck charm, especially among students. One tradition involves sending special Kit Kat postcards to college students just before big exams. The brand leaned into this, marketing the bar as a gift for encouragement and luck, Now, almost 50 years later, it's become firmly lodged in Japanese culture. Japan moves about 4 million mini Kit Kats a day in a range of over 200 flavors, among them wasabi, yubari melon, corn, green beans, sweet potato, cherry, miso, green tea, and soy sauce. They even sell Kit Kat flavored cough drops, which I'm not even sure how that works. Limited edition Kit Kats become highly sought after in Japan, with some traveling across the country in order to obtain them. And they've even switched from plastic to paper packaging that can be folded into origami. That's great. I love that for them.
Yeah. And now we're moving on to Skittles. How do you feel about Skittles?
I like Skittles. I like sour Skittles.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I like to get in a bunch of Skittles and mashing them into a big
An Uber Skittle
in my mouth, and then putting it in my lip like
Shaw.
Yeah, and just walking around with that all day. You know, you didn't do that. Like you ever did that with when you had an Airhead and you do that thing where you'd whip the Airhead in its package down all the way until it was just like a marble sized thing of Airhead?
No, and I genuinely want to know more about what you're talking about. For some reason, I feel like I was not exposed to Airheads as a kid.
You would just take the Airhead, and because it was taffy and it was semi-soft, you would just whip it repeatedly. This happened in elementary school, middle school. Like whenever we get Airheads, we would just see all the boys doing this for like the next 6 hours. Just take your Airhead, hold it by one end, and just keep whipping it back and forth. And eventually the momentum forces the entire Airhead from a long, thin strip into a single mass of sugar at the bottom that's like this, like a little ball. And then you just hork down on that. I don't know why we did it. It was something to do. Also, you could just whip it at people.
I never... Well, Skittles, in my money, always seemed like the highest sugar content, so I always appreciated Skittles. The Mars Company started to produce Skittles in 1974 for the British market. It actually wasn't available in the United States until 1979. The name Skittles actually has a kind of complex origin. There's a lengthy article about it on Vice. It seems to originate from a game called Skittles, which is considered a forerunner of bowling. It's a traditional lawn and target game from Europe dating back to 3000 BC. And then over the millennia, it gradually morphed into an indoor pub game. The name Skittles is actually thought to be from an Old English word, skiotin, meaning to shoot, since the player shoots balls at the pins. Why name a candy after this? Well, there are some who believe that the Skittles, the candy, were so named because the candy resembles the pins that were used. But some believe that it might be a little more vague than that. Charles Dickens used the phrase beer and Skittles in his 1837 book, The Pickwick Papers, as basically a euphemism for jovial, fun, and pleasurable. It's kind of like the forerunner of Netflix
Jerking
and
off.
chill.
Oh, sorry, what? Goonin'. It's the forerunner of Goonin'.
Considering they were initially an English candy, it makes sense that they would choose this very English expression for its name. Now, the folks at Mars are very serious about the S that can be found on Skittles, which, fun fact, if you submerge a Skittle in water, the letter just floats off intact. Try it sometime. They are so serious about the presence of this S that their chief quality control metric is whether or not there's an S on every Skittle. And so, because so many millions of Skittles are made every single day, people in charge of quality control simply check, one representative Skittle out of so many thousand produced. And if it's lacking an S, the entire batch of thousands of Skittles will be destroyed. And to be exact, they get crushed down and sold as animal feed.
Oh, that's fucked up. You should not be feeding animals to that. Then what do they do to the guy who was asleep at the wheel? They shoot him? Take him out into a field like in Casino?
No, they take him to the Tootsie Roll
factory. That's right. He
and
gets fed to the Tootsie Beast.
Oh, that's another 5 years. But on the upside, apparently Skittles are marginally better for you than I initially believed. I was always under the impression that Skittles had a shockingly high amount of sugar contained in it. But apparently it's not the case, or at least no more so than other brands of candy. But even more shockingly, a small bag of Skittles supposedly contains 50% of the daily recommended amount of vitamin C for 8-year-olds and 25% for an adult.
Huh.
So there's actually a quantifiable benefit to eating Skittles.
Did you know about all the NBA players who were like deeply in love with Skittles?
No.
Oh, this was a thing like literally 10 years ago. I mean, it was in the Arizona Republic. Wrote this thing with a sports reporter wrote it in 2013 where this guy was their then forward Michael Beasley was talking about eating 6 or 7 bags of Skittles daily and was patted down for them before he made it to the arena because the team doctors and dietitians were so worried about this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite bit of Skittles apocrypha, everyone knows the whole thing about Reese's Pieces and E.T. It was one of the most successful examples of product placement in history. Steven Spielberg wanted to use M&Ms. M&M said no. They went with Reese's Pieces instead. Apparently, there was I read as much as a 300% increase in sales following the release of E.T. Mars didn't want to get screwed again, so they jumped at their next movie tie-in opportunity. Unfortunately, it was for a legendarily bad E.T. knockoff called Mac and Me, which seemed to really only exist solely as a platform for product placement. There's a lengthy breakdancing scene set in a McDonald's. There's a character who inexplicably wears a McDonald's uniform in every scene. There's an alien who refuses to drink anything but Coke. It's just a very bad movie. It's the butt of a recurring joke with Paul Rudd, who would appear on Conan O'Brien's late night show for 20 plus years, claiming that he had a clip from his new movie he wanted to show, and then he would just show the same absurd clip from Mac and Me of a kid in a wheelchair flying down a hill and off a cliff into a river.
Well, the producer had worked on advertising campaigns with McDonald's and also the Ronald McDonald House Charities. So he was not, the film was not paid for by McDonald's, but he did get money to make the movie from Golden State Foods, which is a food service company that is primarily serves McDonald's. So how far does the rabbit hole go? Very far.
Have you seen Mac and Me?
No. I've seen the clips.
Yeah, I mean that Paul Rudd bit is pretty funny. So yeah, this didn't exactly help the sale of Skittles.
They're great candy.
Yeah.
But the candy brand made up for it in 1994 with their Taste the Rainbow campaign, which is still going strong almost 30 years later, making it one of the longest running ad campaigns ever. And truly insane stuff has graced the Taste the Rainbow campaign. Arguably their most infamous ad was the 2018 Super Bowl. Don't remember it? Well, there's a reason for that. Only one person ever saw it.
Do you remember this?
No. This is something called the Exclusively the Rainbow Project. The Super Bowl is one of the most watched sports events on planet Earth. The Super Bowl is one of the most watched events, period, on planet Earth. It's probably the last bit of monoculture that we actually have as a country. Upwards of 100 million people tune in.
That sounds low now that I actually hear that out loud.
I mean, I'm sure it's been declining.
True.
Or 20, what was it this year?
115 million.
115 in 2023. Yeah, okay. 113, I actually see here, according to Nielsen, but fine. We'll go with your numbers. So, that year, ad buys were going for $5 million for a 30-second spot. Skittles decided to take the piss on this entire concept by filming a big-budget cinematic ad and showing it to just one person. They hired Friends star David Schwimmer to film a series of 4 commercials, one of which was chosen and shown only once to 17-year-old Marcos Menendez of Canoga Park, California. The ad itself was never shown on TV, but on Super Bowl Sunday, fans were invited to go to Skittles' Facebook page to watch Mendez's reaction to seeing it for the first time, viewing it on an off-screen monitor. The only details he shared at the time were that it featured Schwimmer shooting laser beams out of his mouth. Schwimmer told Parade, "When they first told me what they were doing in the premise, I thought, well, that is absurd. To put all this time and energy into these spots that only one teenager was going to see was inherently really funny and subversive. At the time, he hadn't yet met the boy for whom he would be making the commercial, but I hope I do," he added. "It would be kind of weird if I didn't meet him at some point. Maybe Marcos will have to make a video for me in turn." That's weird, David Schwimmer. Or he'll shoot his own commercial with his friend. True to Skittles' word, Menendez remains the only person to have seen the ad. The campaign worked. The Super Bowl 2018 ad remains the most talked about Skittles ad ever and is considered one of the best Super Bowl 2018 ads in general. So how do they top that? Well, the next year, instead of an ultra-exclusive Super Bowl ad, the madmen at Skittles staged a Broadway-style musical on Broadway. Written by Pulitzer Prize finalist Will Eno, the script for the extremely meta production was entitled Skittles Commercial, the Broadway Musical. Copywriter Nathaniel Lawlor, prolific composer Drew Gasparini wrote the songs. And in the 45-minute musical, Michael C. Hall plays an actor about to star in a Skittles ad in the form of a theater piece. Plants in the audience yell at Hall, and then his character runs away, dies, and meets the spirits of Amelia Earhart and Winston Churchill, and wonders if this whole musical ad was a bad idea. This premise is telegraphed through songs like, "This might have been a bad idea," "This was definitely a bad idea," and "Advertising ruins everything." You can hear these songs on the original cast album, along with 4 minutes of Hall eating Skittles. The Skittles commercial musical opened on Broadway on February 3rd, 2019, the night of the Super Bowl, doubling down on the theory that there is zero overlap between theater kids and football fans. The musical also closed that night, by design. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is the best use of advertising dollars. I'm sorry, that is so good. Skittles, in case you hadn't guessed by that insane series of commercials we just relayed to you, is notable for having one of the better corporate social media accounts. In 2016, Donald Trump Jr. famously tweeted out a photo of a bowl of Skittles in order to make an ill-advised point about immigration policies. Writing, I don't think he even wrote it. It was like was it a meme?
It was a meme, yeah, he didn't write it. Yeah.
If I had a bowl of Skittles and I told you just 3 would kill you, would you take a handful? Needless to say, for those of you who know how social media works, the public, once they were done dunking on Donald Trump Jr., quickly turned its eyes to Skittles, who responded as diplomatically and elegantly as they could given the circumstances. Skittles are candy, and refugees are people, and we don't wish to comment further. That was graceful, but the same cannot be said for a campaign that they launched in 2009, early in Twitter's lifespan. They opted to change the landing page of their official website to display tweets that people sent to the company. So what happened next became known as Taste the Failbo. Naturally, people started tweeting various forms of obscenities at the company, usually with the hashtag Skittles fisting, which were then splashed across the brand's website. So many thousands of people tried flooding the Skittles homepage with profane content that for a brief moment, they actually crashed Twitter as a whole. Incredible stuff.
Yes.
And yet somehow, not the worst thing to happen to the Skittles brand.
That is true. In July 2022, a lawsuit was filed in a Northern California federal court alleging that Skittles contain a, quote, known toxin called titanium dioxide, which renders them, according to the lawsuit, quote, unfit for human consumption. Janelle Thames, a resident of San Lorenzo, filed suit against Mars Incorporated seeking class action status, alleging that people who consume Skittles, quote, are at heightened risk of a host of health effects for which they are unaware, stemming from genotoxicity, the ability of a chemical substance to change DNA. The case was dismissed that November 2022, and people went back to shoveling Skittles down their gullets. Now, this brings us to a deeper question. How do you eat Skittles? According to PR Newswire, a 2019 survey conducted by Mars Incorporated uncovered a lot of data about how people eat Skittles. Slightly less than half of Skittles consumers eat them by the handful, like my dear friend Alex Heigl, while 31% eat a few at once, and 20% savor them one by one. Red, or strawberry, is the most beloved flavor, with 33% of fans making that choice, and the least popular flavor, with only 6% citing it as their favorite, is yellow or lemon. Ironically, according to Skittles factory footage analyzed by UK's The Sun, there are more yellow pieces than any other type of flavor in the average bag of Skittles.
I knew
right?
it, and
I
that's
know.
Bullshit.
It really is. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Too Much Information in just a moment. This brings us to another fruity candy classic that has its roots in my beloved UK, Starburst. It was introduced in 1960 by Mars, and it was called initially I don't know why I have such a visceral reaction to how much I hate this name. Starbursts were originally called opal fruits. I don't know why.
It sounds like British slang for testicles.
Oh, he hit me in the old opal fruits, he did. I knew he was a dirty fighter. Down in the old East End, he did. Whacked me round the opal fruits.
It's like Eliza Doolittle. It's haunting. So this name that I hate so much was a result of a contest. The winner, a London copywriter named Peter Pfeffer, came up with the name Opal Fruits, which netted him the princely sum of £5, or about $200 in today's money. For those of you who have a head for numbers, you'll notice that is significantly less than the hundreds of millions of dollars the candy brand pulls in each year. The candy was introduced to the United States in 1968 under the name M&M's Fruit Chewies before they finally, that did not last long before they changed it to its more famous moniker, Starburst. Now, the origin of this name is unknown, but it's believed to be both a reference to the burst of flavor and also a somewhat cheap ploy to get in on the space race fever that had gripped America at this time. The UK version remained Opal Fruits until 1998, during which point it fell victim to globalism and was changed to Starburst, much like how the Marathon bar was changed to Snickers in the 90s. This was apparently hugely controversial to candy loyalists in the UK, and there was a lot of celebration when Mars released a throwback version of the candy in original Opal Fruit style packaging. You like that a lot.
Just the phrase "candy loyalists" taking heavy losses in the portions of the city controlled by the candy loyalists.
The long, slender, jerky-like packaging.
You wrote this. What's your problem?
I wrote this all in like one day. The long, slender, jerky-like packaging was supposedly made to resemble mini space food sticks. Are you familiar with space food sticks?
It's just all dehydrated crap, right? Anything?
I mean, it's like worse than that. It's like, it was like kind of barely food. It was developed in the late 60s by Pillsbury's chief food technologist, a guy by the name of Howard Bauman, whose team had worked closely with NASA in the past. He'd created the first solid food consumed by a NASA astronaut. They were just bland food cubes eaten during Scott Carpenter's trip on the Aurora 7 in 1962. I think he was the third American in space. And John Glenn had famously consumed the fruit-flavored Tang drink in space 3 months earlier on the Friendship 7. But space food cubes were followed by other space-friendly foods created by Pillsbury. There was a non-crumbly cake, a relish that could be served in slices, almost like cranberry sauce, and then there was meat that needed no refrigeration. So in 1970, Pillsbury trademarked a, quote, non-frozen balanced energy snack in rod form containing nutritionally balanced amounts of carbohydrate, fat, and protein, which is just base level. Like, this will keep you alive. I guess non-frozen balanced energy snack in rod form wasn't quite snappy enough, so they changed it for consumers to space food sticks. It was widely considered a forerunner of energy bars. They came in 6 flavors, including peanut butter, caramel, and chocolate. And in 1972, astronauts on board the Skylab 3 space station ate modified versions of space food sticks to test their, quote, gastrointestinal capability. But they were generally an Earth-based product. But the packages were almost identical to the long, slender ones that we know today as Starburst, which was likely not an accident. Because, again, this candy has its roots in the space race. Now, the original Opal fruit flavors that were launched in the UK included strawberry, lemon, orange, and lime, but the lime was later replaced with cherry in the early 80s, which, on one hand, I find kind of weird because there's cherry and strawberry, but everyone knows that the reds are the best, and the pink is the best of the two, including the folks at Mars. They know this. That's why they released all pink packages of Starbursts.
I still just can't get over the phrase non-frozen balanced energy snack in rod form. I got one of those for you, buddy.
Later.
You play your cards right.
Freeze-dried ice cream, though, whips.
Sure. We'd be remiss to discuss Starburst without mentioning the berries and cream guy. This TikTok phenomenon began life as a 2007 commercial for Starburst to launch their berries and cream flavor, and starred actor Jack Ferver as a little lad with a bowl haircut and knickers who performs a little jig with jazz hands about how much he loves berries and cream. It's completely nonsensical and unhinged, but became extremely popular due to its randomness. And when TikTok blew up, the audio was posted to the platform by podcaster and former video games journalist Justin McElroy, who captioned the video, "Please make great art with this sound. It's what we all need."
Are you familiar with it?
That's what people did. I don't remember. I remember the original commercial because I'm old, but I don't remember it blowing up on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, no, it got huge, yeah.
All right. Well, there's a YouTube tutorial that dates back to the commercial's debut in 2007, which involves running in place, clapping your hands, tapping your left hand to your right heel and your right hand to your left heel, and gesturing to yourself.
Got that?
Savvy?
So from fruity taffy of Starburst, we go to something even softer, gummy bears. Before we delve into the creation of gummy bears, we should touch on the origin of gummies, or jelly candies. These were first made with flour or starch and had a softer, more bouncy texture. And initially, they used boiled down grape juice in lieu of sugar. And the most famous example of this is likely Turkish Delights, or lokum in the original Turkish, which has been around for centuries. A confectioner named Hachi Bakir Effendi opened a candy shop in what is now Istanbul in 1777 to sell Turkish Delights. And today the store, which is still in his family, is the oldest business in Turkey. And according to the BBC, one of the 100 oldest still operating businesses on Earth. Turkish Delights became popular all over the globe, but Europeans, for whatever reason, had a difficult time making these candies with starch. So instead, by the late 19th century, they had turned to gelatin, which is, in candy-making circles, generally regarded as cheating. In 1909, the British candy maker Charles Gordon Maynard debuted wine gums, which is one of the first commercially successful sweets made with gelatin. These candies don't contain actual wine, though Maynard got into fights about this with his teetotaler dad, but they did combine chewy gelatin with sweet flavoring. And they still exist today. You can find them in the import aisle at your local supermarket, usually. So we got little gummy coins, these wine gums. Where are the goddamn whimsical animals? Enter Hans Riegel, a whimsical name if I've ever heard one, who left his job at a German candy factory in 1920 to start his own, Haribo. The name is a portmanteau of his first name, Hans, his last name, Riegel, and the hometown of Bonn, Germany, Haribo. Haribo's first products were colorless hard candies that Riegel made in a copper pot at home and sold at local street fairs. This met with middling success, but in 1922 he had a new brainwave. Why not model these fruit-flavored bits of gelatin into bears? That was sure to make his candy stand out, and, it was just crazy enough to work. So he unveiled Haribo's signature product, the Gold Bears, or Dancing Bears, as they are originally known. They've actually never been branded as gummy bears, only gummy candy, as the package says. Now, Zoolander voice, but why bears? That is the big question. The bears were an homage to the festivals in Germany that featured dancing bears. And dancing bears, for those who don't know, is a tradition that goes back centuries, apparently to the Middle Ages. And like most antiquated traditions that go back to the Middle Ages, it's fairly inhumane. Bears were poached from the wild as cubs and taught to dance by being forced to stand on metal plates over fire while music played. And as the plates heated up, the bears would hop from foot to relieve the searing pain. After a time, a sort of Pavlovian effect would take over, and these bears would begin to hop or dance at the sound of music being played because they associated it with pain. Heigl, don't you associate music with pain?
Yes, but that's only because I've been doing it so long.
Despite this horrific conditioning... Oh, I got
nothing.
Factoid?
I got nothing. That's so f***ing grim.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they used to do with Britney Spears?
Oh. Michael Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Despite this horrific conditioning, dancing bears were a beloved part of German festivals until well into the 20th century, which is what led Hans Riegel to base his gummies on that shape. But to remove that horrible image from your mind, I want to present you with this wholesome fact. Every October since the 1930s, little kids have been invited to visit the Haribo headquarters to trade in acorns and chestnuts for free gummy treats. Does that make it a little better?
No, it does not. By the 1960s, these dancing bears, or Tanzbären, the last thing many an American GI saw before dying face down in the mud. A squad of Tanzbären coming for him. We're a man, our boys. We lost a lot of good boys to the Tanzbärens. We're a mainstay of German candy stores, and how did you say I one-up me with that line without even knowing what I was going to go riff on?
I knew what you were going to riff on.
Like so many Germans before them, Haribo sought to expand their reach. A gummy Lebensraum, if you will. To prepare to expand into an international market, they changed the look of the bears. From more slender and naturalistic to delightfully chubbier, teddy bear-like figures with piercing blue eyes, blonde hair. In 1967, they also expanded their flavor palette from just gold, which was all that they made for 50 years, to the multicolored pack we're familiar with today, featuring strawberry, lemon, orange, pineapple. After slowly expanding across Europe, Haribo brought gummy bears to the United States in 1982, a year after the American company Trolley introduced gummy worms to kids. And before long, the gummy craze had begun. The gummy bears' arrival was heralded not unlike the Beatles in 1964, with a major television debut. Disney made their first animated TV show based on the candy, an idea that came to Disney CEO Michael Eisner one day when his son requested a gummy bear. Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears aired from 1985 to 1991 on NBC, and this show does not exist.
Yeah, I have no memory. Did you know of this?
Nope, not a real thing. Do they get eaten? What are they trying to battle?
It's like Care Bears. I mean, it kind of looks like, if I recall from when no, they're not like Care Bears at all. I have no idea. Because there's nothing about them seems especially gummy either. They just seem like bears.
We should have given the worms a special.
Oh, man.
Just a bunch of worms, animated worms, just running around, getting into hijinks.
Yeah, there's nothing about them. There's no candy involved in this show, which offends me deeply.
It marked the end of Disney's policy of staying out of animated television, which is funny. This was the shot across the bow, their annexation of Poland, if you will. So in a sense, the Adventures of the Gummy Bears paved the way for Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Goof Troop, Tailspin. There's been an astonishing assortment of shapes and flavors of gummy goodness over the years. Your personal favorite is a limited edition produced in Germany known as Arsch mit Ohren, which translates to a German insult meaning ass with ears. Sure. Yeah. They're the scat porn people, though, right?
Oh, wow. Do yourself a favor and Google.
Don't.
No, you should. You should right now.
What is it? As a racist cartoon? Or
no, it's exactly what I don't. It's the Arrested Development bit.
I don't know what I
expected.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Huh.
Think about that's like the most offensive to me is that the ears are so red.
There was another version of gummies by Trolleys called Roadkill, which were shaped like flattened animals with tire marks across them. Ultimately, the New Jersey Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals complained that it would encourage children to be cruel to animals.
Why, Jersey's the one who stepped up to the plate for that.
Yeah, right. There's a restaurant in Japan that offers customers life-size gummy models of themselves, which I would do. Can you pick the year? Can I pick my younger self, my more svelte self? I'd like to have my stick thin 2017 version immortalized in
gummy gelatin.
In gelatin, and then I put it in my attic, and then for every sin of hedonism and gluttony, it gets slowly ravaged. The gummy portrait of Alex Heigl. There's an interesting phenomenon at play when it comes to the flavors of the Haribo bears. The Tanzenbären. Heigl, Tanzenbären. The flavors don't always match of what we think of the colors. Some people have reported that Haribo's green bear tastes like apple or watermelon when it's actually strawberry flavored. And this is due to the fact that our brains are extremely suggestible. Just seeing the color yellow is enough to convince us that what we're tasting is lemon, even if we're eating something that's been flavored with a different fruit. This effect was demonstrated in an experiment about the influence of food coloring on taste perception. Researchers had college students sample clear, fruit-flavored beverages that had been dyed random colors. Even when the experimenters asked their subjects to ignore the color of what they were drinking, they still reported tasting flavors that were merely suggested by the food dye. So, while Haribo claims to use unique flavorings for each gummy bear colors, they might be damn liars.
Speaking of unusual gummy flavors, this brings us to Swedish fish.
I like Swedish fish. What do you think?
The fact that they're shaped like fish kind of throws me, though. Like, I just don't like the idea of like swallowing goldfish or something. I can't deal with that. Fish freak me out, though.
Okay, noted.
Oh. I told you why. I lived on a lake, and when I was a kid, the neighbors would take dead fish on rakes and like fling them at me. ever tell you this? Oh yeah, no, it's
What a bizarre life you've led. Sometimes I just think about what it's like deep in the cages of your subconscious.
yeah. Now here I am, half till midnight, talking about Swedish fish. Swedish fish, as you may have imagined, have their origins in Sweden. They were created in the 1950s by the Malaco Company, who were attempting to expand into the U.S. market. And they opted to shape their gummy product like fish because that was one of Sweden's largest exports at the time, and they figured Americans would associate Sweden with fish. By the 1960s, their multi-flavored variety bag began to take off, and soon it was an international hit. Swedish fish do exist in Sweden, but the candies are a little different than their American counterparts. For starters, they're called
Pastellfiskar. Pastellfiskar.
which translates to pale-colored fish. And instead of the word Swedish printed on the side, like in the U.S., the Swedish candies have the brand Malaco printed on the side. But in the U.S., the flavor that's most famous is the OG red version of Swedish fish, which you'd be forgiven for calling cherry. In fact, there's quite a bit of debate over what the flavor of the red Swedish fish is supposed to actually be. Many people think it's meant to taste like cherry, others strawberry, some say raspberry, or even fruit punch. And there are others who think that the red Swedish fish are meant to taste like lingonberry, which is a berry native to Scandinavia. To date, the manufacturers have never issued a statement on what the flavor is actually meant to be. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's lingonberry.
I'd be hard-pressed to describe what a lingonberry tastes like, or even looks like. Could be anything. I could have had one this morning.
It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
It could be right behind you. I mean, that's why, because it's like I know what all those other things taste like, and Swedish fish doesn't taste like that. So it's kind of why I'm thinking lingonberry. And if they were leaning so hard into like the Sweden national identity to be like, oh yeah, like fish is our biggest export.
Yeah.
So let's make it shaped like fish. They would probably want something that's, uniquely their culture, like this berry. So myth busted. I'm going to call that one. And now a candy that kind of gets a bad rap because I never think about it, but then whenever I have it, I enjoy it. Milk Duds. A lot of people hate them even more than Tootsie Rolls. In a recent poll, they were voted the worst Halloween chocolate with a healthy 26% of the vote. I would say that the name Milk Duds doesn't do it any favors.
Yeah.
I mean,
Milk Eat this suck bar. What'd you call your candy duds? It's like I was reading about Howlin' Wolf the other night. They had like a Howlin' Wolf album that they cover Leonard Chess's genius masterstroke. This was in the 60s, or like late 60s, when they were trying to make all those OG blues guys like psychedelic. And they were like Electric Mud is the famous Muddy Waters one, and they did one for Howlin' Wolf. And the album cover was just white and then black text that said, "This is Howlin' Wolf's new album. He doesn't like it."
he didn't like his electric guitar at first either.
Right, yeah. And then Leonard Chess was conceded that later it may not have been a genius marketing move to put that the artist did not like the album on his album.
Really? Oh, I thought it like is generally agreed that was like a good idea.
I don't know. I don't think well, go ahead.
But yeah, Milk Duds, the name, they got some blowback from that. A former executive at the Holloway Candy Co. admitted to the Chicago Tribune that they, quote, got some flack about the name, but it was supposed to be duds as in fancy duds, not duds as in non-winners. But the creator's own son would later say nobody liked it. Everybody thought it would be a loser. So I guess the creator of Milk Duds, Edwin Holloway, he was trying to make chocolate-covered caramels into little perfect spheres. And instead he got what we now know as Milk Duds, these little shriveled bits of chocolate, like almost like a rock-like shape.
Yeah,
And
you
he
know,
called
they're
them
duds.
duds. Yeah, I mean, it was apparently the truth of where that name came from. And I think it was just an unflattering nickname that stuck, and then they tried to spin it unsuccessfully. However, the candy's big break came amid the Great Depression. Milk Duds thrived during this time of economic crisis due to poor relationship dynamics, I guess. The aforementioned Milk Duds executive explained to the Chicago Tribune, I don't know why the Chicago Tribune was doing such an extensive expose on Milk Duds. He said a lot of men were out of work during the Great Depression. Rather than go home and hear the wife complain about being unemployed, a lot of men would go to a movie for a nickel. And for another nickel, they could buy a box of Milk Duds. And that would take care of them for a couple hours. The theater business was the backbone of the company. That is true. I feel like I've never seen anyone eat Milk Duds outside of a theater. So that's all very surprising to me. And to me, so is its association with Major League Baseball. In the early 70s, Milk Duds made a major play to be associated with the sport, presumably because of some sort of blood feud with Cracker Jacks. In 1971, they were named the official candy of the Major League Baseball Players Association, and the back of the boxes were decorated with pictures of then-famous Major League Baseball players as sort of Milk Dud-centric versions of collectible baseball cards, which I think are relatively sought after these days as collectibles. And speaking of both baseball and chocolate candies that no one in 2023 actually seems to like, Baby Ruth. The one fact that everyone knows, or at least thinks they know about this candy bar, is that it was named in honor of Babe Ruth. That is sort of true, but the real story is a little less cut and dry. In 1921, the Curtis Candy Company rechristened their candy cake bars as Baby Ruth. At this time, Babe Ruth, the baseball player's star, was on the ascent, but the company would officially claim that they got the name from former President Grover Cleveland's daughter, who had died tragically at age 12. This is a sweet story, but it sort of falls apart when you realize that Grover Cleveland had been out of the White House for 24 years, and his daughter Ruth had been dead for 17 years. So this is like, I don't know, naming a candy bar after Chelsea Clinton. If Chelsea Clinton had died a tragic premature death in the 90s, like that would be the equivalent. It's a weird marketing move. So my theory is that this candy company had tried and failed to get an endorsement deal with Babe Ruth himself, and when that failed, they kept the tie-in without paying royalties and made up a sob story that would make anyone who pursued them legally look like a real jerk.
I like that. That's plausible to me.
That's my theory. Hilariously, they wound up in court anyway. George Herman Ruth, Babe Ruth, decided to create his own candy bar, and the Baby Ruth Company had the gall to sue him for copyright infringement due to the similarity of the name, despite the fact that it was his own name. Shockingly, the court ruled in favor of the Curtis Candy Company, the makers of Baby Ruth, and Babe Ruth never got to produce his own candy bar, which is a damn shame. The Curtis Candy Company then proceeded to basically mock Babe Ruth in their advertising campaign for years. Not only did the company put up a billboard near where Babe Ruth's World Series ball landed, but they also continued to sponsor baseball teams for years, most notably the Chicago Cubs in 2007. A more unique ad campaign took place in 1923, 2 years after the Baby Ruth candy bar was launched. The Curtis Candy Company hired a plane to drop thousands of individual Baby Ruth bars over Pittsburgh, each tied to a mini parachute. And the plan was so successful that they repeated it in several other cities in 40 states. It's raining Arguably, Baby Ruth's greatest culinary legacy is the fact that they were one of the first brands, in fact, I think the first brand to make a miniature version of itself. They debuted the junior version of Baby Ruth chocolates in 1932, predating the fun-sized versions of Snickers and Milky Way by, I think, 35 years. But for my money, Baby Ruth's biggest influence is on the big screen. Not only was the candy bar featured in my beloved 80s classic The Goonies, but it also made a truly iconic showing in 1980s Caddyshack in the infamous floater scene. Need we provide a recap?
No.
You know, somebody throws it in the pool and everybody thinks it's
No, I said we don't have to do that.
not a candy bar. Okay. The movie was co-written by Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's brother, and partially inspired by his memory working as a caddy at the Indian Hill Club in Winnetka, Illinois. And there were some who've claimed that the Baby Ruth prank in the pool was inspired by a real event at the Murray's high school. To my immense regret, however, I must share that this scene is not technically accurate since Baby Ruth bars are unable to float in water. The scene is essentially the anti-product placement, considering the product is being linked to human fecal matter. As a result, the candy bar has been somewhat stigmatized, and I have to admit, I kind of fall for this as well. I'm not a fan of Baby Ruth, and it's probably because of memories of either sloth eating it. Or,
yeah, watching him eat it did a lot to dissuade me from wanting to do it. Yeah, we haven't done sours. Jordan, what do you make of the sour candy varietal?
I mean, I feel like they're always made as like the second string version of, like sour Skittles, for example. I feel like there's very few candy brands that are loud and proud, we are a sour candy.
I'm so glad you said that, because Sour Patch Kids began life in Canada as Mars Men, which was intended to capitalize on the UFO craze, sweeping the countries. Sweeping the continent? Sweeping the continent.
Sweeping the globe.
Sweeping the globe, baby. By the time the company sought to expand into the United States in 1985, they decided to hop on a new bandwagon, Cabbage Patch Kids. They rebranded themselves based on the famous toy, and shockingly, no intellectual property suit was filed when these men became boys. There's not a ton that's interesting about Sour Patch Kids, but they did take on an interesting marketing tack back in 2015 when they leased a house in Austin, Texas to use as a crash pad for traveling bands. They supposedly also got a place in Brooklyn too. I don't know. Did any of our friends ever stay there?
I've never heard of it.
Dubbed The Patch, bands were allowed to stay for free as they passed through town in exchange for Instagramming pictures of the house, along with the appropriate Sour Patch Kids hashtags, presumably. In addition to destroying the social media integrity of said bands, the arrangement also managed to piss off the neighbors. According to Austin Culture, several neighbors complained about the noise coming from the Patch House and the disruption it caused to the community. One local threatened legal action, arguing that in the East Austin area, per the current short-term rental ordinance, you're required to pay city and state hotel taxes for any rentals less than 30 days. If there's one thing that's scarier, though, than real estate legal squabbles, it's candy, laced with drugs. According to WFLA, in 2015, officials found a synthetic drug called Flocka, similar to bath salts, in a candy that looked suspiciously like Sour Patch Kids. Likely an intentional move to persuade young people to try the candy, get hooked on the drug, and come back for more. So, I don't know, don't pick up stray Sour Patch Kids you find on the ground. Isn't the whole thing about drugs in Halloween candy like a complete statistical, like nothing burger? Like that's never once ever actually happened.
I thought I saw that it did a few times, but like not often enough to warrant the terror. You see anything?
Washington Post, the history of the drug-laced candy myth.
Oh.
Well, I guess it has to do with trafficking. I mean, for example, there was at LAX, the sheriff's department seized 12,000 presumed fentanyl pills last year that had been stashed inside Skittles, Whoppers, and Sweet Tarts boxes and bags. So that's it. But I don't think people... I mean, the general diffusion of this idea is that people who sell drugs generally want to make a profit, not give free drugs to children.
It's a bad business move at the end of the day to kill your customers.
Yeah. Oh, I think it dates back to the Tylenol killings in 1982 when 7 people died after being when someone had gone and tampered with Tylenol bottles and laced them with cyanide. But Joel Best, a professor of sociology at criminal justice at the University of Delaware, told NPR just this year that I have data going back to 1958, and I have yet to find a report of a child that's been killed or seriously hurt by a contaminated treat picked up in the course of trick-or-treating. He did find one case of a man in Texas murdering his own son with poisoned candy.
Jesus Christ.
But I guess, yeah, I don't know. All right, that's great. What are we talking about?
Well, we've come to the crown jewel in the candy crown. It's
running
late.
on empty.
Allow myself to introduce myself. We have come, of course, to Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, which is, I like it. It's I don't subscribe to the cult that's around it, but I appreciate that a lot of people do. It's created by H.B. Reese, who was a foreman at the Hershey Company's milk operation known as the Round Barn way back in the 1910s. When the Round Barn closed, he decided to branch out and start his own candy company, which would later be bought and distributed by Hershey's again, so sunrise, sunsets. According to the Hershey Community Archives, Reese's earlier chocolates were named after his children. They were called things like the Lizzie Bar, which is a chocolate-covered caramel and shaved coconut candy bar, and the Johnny Bar, which is a molasses bar. Ooh, Johnny got screwed in that one.
No, it's from Johnny Cakes.
Still crappy dessert. I don't know, Lizzie got the better one.
Okay.
But it was Reese's invention of a chocolate peanut butter cup in 1928 that made him an icon, and he named those after himself. Actually, they were originally known as penny cups because they sold for a penny, as the name would suggest. Initially, they weren't even available for purchase individually, but were included in 5-pound bags of candy that were sold to stores in bulk that were just an assorted variety pack. Reese began selling the cups as a freestanding item at some point around 1935, and by some estimates, Reese's cups earned the #1 spot among Halloween candy brands year after year after year. In fact, Hershey sells more than $500 million worth of Reese's annually. And it's a pretty sweet success story considering that Reese's first attempt at a chocolate brand went bust after the public didn't take kindly to his chocolate-covered raisins and nuts. One of the factors that aided in the success of peanut butter cups was actually World War II. As we mentioned at several points during this episode, both sugar and chocolate were rationed during the war, which made it tough for candy companies to keep up with demands for sweets. But peanut butter was never rationed, which meant that Reese's could continue manufacturing of these cups relatively unimpeded. And from World War II, we go to Japan. Did you know, Heigl, that for nearly 90 years, the only place you could get Reese's peanut butter cups in Japan was on American Army bases?
I sure didn't.
Apparently, that's because there's a preservative that isn't allowed in Japan that we used to make them with.
Of course.
I love when there's stuff that we make that's in everything that's like other countries are like, no, you can't. But most recently, Walmart branches in Japan, which is something that I really want to Google and see a picture of because those things just so don't go together in my mind, began to stock Reese's peanut butter cups because it's Walmart. And in 1978, as Reese's brands celebrated the 50th anniversary of their flagship product, the peanut butter cup, they introduced Reese's Pieces. This is where we insert the ET anecdote, which we've already touched on. We don't need to get into that again. Now, we're about to head into an odds and ends segment, but some of you may be wondering why we haven't really mentioned M&M's much on this episode. I have a funny feeling that M&M's could potentially be its own standalone at some point later on. So we'll save that for later.
Chalky, disgusting. Who pines for M&M's?
Really?
Yeah, awful.
Not even the peanut ones?
I'll give you the peanut ones, but that's because it's mostly peanut.
Actually, I like the almond ones. The almond ones are good.
This is how I know you're a sociopath. Almond M&M's.
Yeah, why not?
Aren't those just Jordan almonds?
Well, first of all, why wouldn't I like Jordan almonds? Second of all, no, Jordan almonds doesn't have chocolate in them. It's just like sugary.
Hmm.
You know what would be really good?
What's
M&M's? Cashew M&M's.
Oh yeah. Now you're talking.
Right?
Now you're talking.
Yeah, come on. See, we're spitballing here. Regular M&M's aren't bad though.
Yeah, they are.
Really?
Not good. Why would you do that?
Did you ever go to the M&M store?
Yes, Jordan. I went to the
Did you
M&M
really?
store. No! The only thing I've ever been to in Times Square is the world's largest Applebee's.
Oh yeah, did you write? You wrote a story on that.
Never saw an editor. I just published it right to the back end.
Wasn't it on Thanksgiving?
The day before Thanksgiving, because that's the biggest bar night of the year.
What was Applebee's in Times Square like on the night before Thanksgiving? I should probably read the piece, but I know I did at one point. But
Yeah, that was it. I was just saying I'll go to the world's largest Applebee's on the day before Thanksgiving, which is the biggest bar day of the year. That's it.
was this like a we tried it?
Maybe. I don't really remember. I was drinking a lot.
All right, so we've reached our odds and ends section of this episode. Why is bubblegum pink? The short answer, it was an accident. The recipe was created by an accountant named Walter E. Dimer, who worked at the Fleer Company in 1928. According to Gumball.com, Dimer was playing with the recipe of this gum to make it less sticky. When it came time to add food coloring, pink was the only color he had.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows that lifesavers look like a lifesaver, as in a flotation device. There's a popular rumor that lifesavers has a hole in the middle as a method to prevent choking, thus making it a pun in multiple ways. But that is just an urban legend. In truth, the hole is simply there because it's easier to manufacture. I researched Almond Joys for this episode. There's nothing interesting about them, but I would like to add that an early version of the Allman Brothers Band was known as the Almond Joys, which is medium funny.
Yeah.
Oh, Pez. We got to talk about Pez. Pez is getting harder and harder to find, I've discovered. It was invented in 1927 as a breath mint for smokers. The name Pez refers to pfefferminz, which is the German word. Yeah, it's the German word for peppermint. And the first Pez dispensers were called box regulars, were shaped like cigarette lighters and came with notes encouraging smokers to quit. And the flip top was designed for people to only need one hand in case they were driving. And it wasn't until the 50s that Pez, who were, eager to expand into the U.S. markets, came out with fruity flavors and dispensers that were targeted to kids. Oh, here, Heigl, you like licorice. You do this next one.
No. I want to get something out of the way first.
Okay. Well, here, I'll read the next one. We'll come back to that one.
No.
Three Musketeers.
No. You stop. Do you know what the most expensive Pez dispenser is in history?
Oh, that's a great question. Is it electric?
No. You'll never guess.
Oh. Is it old?
Yes.
I don't know.
It was sold for $13,000.
Wow.
It was a custom-made red Democratic donkey Pez dispenser created as a gift for John F. Kennedy, presented to him in Vienna, Austria in 1961. After the trip, the Secret Service ordered the return of the Pez dispensers to the company, presumably for safety reasons, and the Pez management gave one away as a gift, which is the one that went to auction, and kept the other two in storage. One of them has never been sold and remains on display in the Pez corporate offices. The second most expensive one was a Foghorn Leghorn one.
Why?
Sold for just over $7,000.
Why? Wow. Good find.
Yeah, there you go.
The Three Musketeers bars, we haven't touched on that in this episode. They were so called originally because the packaging originally contained 3 small candy bars in a single package, and each was a different flavored nougat. There was a chocolate nougat, vanilla nougat, and strawberry nougat. However, when sugar was being rationed during World War II, the company decided to narrow it down to just a single chocolate flavor, which was found to be the most popular, and that's how it remains to this day. Nougat was often chosen to be used in candy bars at the turn of the century due to its similarity in consistency and flavor to ice cream. It was common and popular to freeze nougat-based candy bars in order to mimic ice cream when eaten. I've seen that on multiple websites, and everybody says it tastes very, very good.
Nougat feels like a slur.
Maybe because we're both Italian.
Yeah, nougat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to do the Twizzlers one. I know you like Twizzlers.
Each year, about 1 million miles of Twizzlers are produced, the equivalent of 76 times the length of the Great Wall of China. And
I
yet,
actually did the math on that.
Yeah?
I didn't realize that the Great Wall of China was 13,000 miles long.
big fucking wall, man.
Yeah. I don't know. Somehow a million miles sounds more impressive than 76 Great Walls of China, though, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, we got a Simpsons one on here. You gotta do the Simpsons.
Butterfingers were actually the follow-up to Baby Ruth bars. Their commercials in 1988 featured an early version of The Simpsons. Prior to the premiere of their own show on Fox, they were already a known quantity for their shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show. Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger. I love Butterfingers. They will f up your fillings, though. Yeah.
Oh, your fillings? Why?
Oh, because like when you actually bite into them, that peanut combination stuff really just lodges in there. But man, yeah, I love a Butterfinger.
Oh, this next one's got a Titanic fact in it, so I gotta take this one.
Please.
Hershey's Kisses were produced in 1907, and Milton Hershey apparently never explained why he chose to give it that name. To me, maybe I'm just so used to it, I just thought it made total sense. It looks like a little Cupid's bow. I don't know. It just seems to work. But apparently it's a big mystery and was a closely guarded secret that he took to his grave. But a popular theory as to why they're called kisses is because it was the sound or the motion of the chocolate being deposited during manufacturing onto the tray. So, I don't know. There you go. But more relevant to my interests, Milton Hershey has a Titanic connection. He and his wife, Kitty, had a deposit down for a room on the Titanic for its one and only voyage from Southampton to New York in 1912. And they ended up skipping the sailing, although the reasons are unclear. I've heard that either Kitty was sick or Milton had business that meant he had to travel back to America earlier than expected. I think the latter is probably the accurate version because the story goes they took a German ship called the America who actually was traveling in front of the Titanic and sent the ship ice warnings because they said, you know, it's going through ice fields right now, slow down, which was a warning the Titanic did not heed.
Yeah, I actually find Hershey's really interesting, not just because I grew up outside of it and most of my family worked there in one capacity
I didn't
or
know
another.
that.
Yeah, my cousin worked at the amusement park. My sister was a lifeguard at the hotel pool. I worked in the country club kitchen, all at various times. And Hershey's, the reason that the chocolate is not good is because his big gambit with this was he originally wanted to make caramel, and
Right.
caramel's much trickier to work with. So he attended the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, which is like, you know, that big World's Fair thing. And so he gave up on caramel, returned to the Lancaster, founded the Hershey Company in 1894. And basically his strategy was to buy cheaper beans and roast them longer to, you know, mask the fact that they were cheap. And this produces the quintessential Hershey's taste, which people have described as chalk-like. But you know, it's he was doing it with a stated goal of democratizing it because it was such a luxury item at the time. It was just absolutely not affordable for, you know, common folk. And using fresh milk and doing cheaper other raw ingredients made it, you know, really affordable. And I don't know, something about that is still really weirdly admirable for me. You know, I have like no other dog in this fight. I don't give a shit about Hershey or Pennsylvania, but you know.
That's not what you said during our episode of Food Court when we debated the merits of milk versus dark chocolate.
That's
to
true.
the death.
That's true. But you kind of sprung that one on me.
Well, I sprang on you.
I didn't realize. I thought that was going to be like an actual debate, and I woke up at like 6 a.m. to tape that, and it was like you had like a written oral argument out, and I winged that whole thing off the top of my dome.
Did you really?
Yeah, I prepared nothing.
Your research, I don't know. I feel like your research was better than mine.
I was Googling that live.
Wow. I was very impressed. I brought the passion, though.
You did.
I did get angrier than you, which was
so
or
rare.
pretended to get angrier
So
than
rare.
you. Yeah. I didn't get actually angry.
No, I know. Anyway,
unlike people in England, the candy loyalists who were pissed off
who took to the
when
streets.
the opal fruits were turned into Starburst. I'm fascinated by the different names in England for the same candy. We've talked about how the Snickers were Marathon in the UK, Starburst were opal fruits, Twix were Raider bars, and the UK version of Mars bars were basically an American Milky Way. And there's also a European version of the Milky Way, which is basically a Three Musketeers bar. And rather than Mounds, the coconut dark chocolate candy bar, I think it's dark chocolate, stores in Canada, Australia, and the UK sell coconut bars called Bounty. So there you go.
Which sick son of a bitch out there actually likes Mounds?
Over Almond Joy? I like Almond Joy. But given the choice, yeah, it's like, why would you not just have the almond? Or do you hate them both?
I just don't like coconut.
Oh, well, yeah. And we're going to end where we came in, from candy corn to another ancient candy that no one likes, but is still inexplicably produced. I'm talking, of course, about Necco wafers. They've used the same recipe since 1847 with the same flavors: orange, lime, clove, chocolate, cinnamon, licorice, and wintergreen.
Clove.
And at one point,
weird.
I know. At one point, they attempted to change the ingredients, but this sparked outrage among their dedicated fans. And you know what? I think that a lot of people taking a gross candy way too seriously is a perfect note to end on.
Me too.
I think we did it.
We did it.
We have tasted the rainbow.
21 pages of candy. You sick son of a bitch. You did it.
Well, my sugar rush has worn off and I am crashing. It is past 1 a.m. my time. Well, Heigl, thank you for bearing with me on this. You can have the most gruesome horror movie of your dreams for the next episode to offset
It's
this.
finally time for me to be fed to the Tootsie Beast. And with it, I leave with the traditional benediction that we give to it as it subsumes us in its tentacled maw. Roughly translated, thank you for listening, folks. This has been Too Much Information. I'm Alex Heigl.
And I'm Jordan Runtagh. We'll catch you next time. Too Much Information was a production of iHeart Radio.
The show's executive producers are Noel Brown and Jordan Runtagh.
The show's supervising producer is Michael Alder June.
The show was researched, written, and hosted by Jordan Runtagh and Alex Heigl,
with original music by Seth Applebaum and the Ghost Funk Orchestra. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. For more podcasts on iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.